Recently, a weird number keeps showing up on Chinese social media, and it's not GDP, rent, or inflation, but strangely, the year 1644. People start by complaining about jobs, dating, and money, and then casually type, "We mourn the fall of the Ming Dynasty," like it's normal. At first, it sounds like late night history nerd humor, the kind you scroll past without thinking too deeply about it. But when officials issue warnings and delete posts, that's usually the moment you realize someone important is paying attention. So the obvious question becomes, why are stressed young people suddenly talking about an empire that collapsed 400 years ago? And no, this story isn't really about emperors, ancient wars, or memorizing dates for school exams nobody actually enjoyed. It's about how people talk when saying things directly feels risky, pointless, or just emotionally exhausting right now. To understand why 1644 suddenly matters today, we need to slow down and look at how daily life actually feels. Let's be honest. Daily life for many young people in China feels tiring, repetitive, and quietly stressful, rather than exciting or hopeful. Official numbers say youth unemployment dropped slightly, but those statistics hide a lot of awkward and uncomfortable reality underneath. Many graduates accept lower pay, short contracts, or jobs completely unrelated to what they spent years studying and worrying about. So, yes, people technically have jobs, but the long term career path feels blurry, unstable, or honestly broken. Delivery work and platform gigs quickly fill the gap, offering flexibility and fast income, but almost no sense of long term security. Some state media even describe this lifestyle as digital nomad freedom, which sounds nice but quietly drives many people crazy. Because struggling to survive doesn't suddenly feel free just because someone gave it a cooler name. Add rising rent, housing pressure, family expectations, and social comparison into that already crowded mental space. When life already feels tight, even small policy changes suddenly feel personal and emotionally loaded. Take the condom tax debate. Technically minor, financially small, but emotionally explosive for stressed young people online. To many, it feels like society says, please have kids, while quietly making the entire process more expensive. Then there's the talent visa program, inviting young foreign professionals into cities where competition already feels brutal. On paper, it makes sense economically, but emotionally, it triggers a simple question. So, what about us? None of these issues create instant rage or mass protests, but they quietly build long term exhaustion. And when people feel exhausted, they don't always shout slogans or march loudly in public spaces. Sometimes they joke, sometimes they meme, and sometimes they borrow history to share frustrations safely. Online, direct criticism can disappear fast, sometimes taking entire accounts and years of posts with it. So people learn to speak sideways using hints, symbols, and shared references instead of direct statements. That's exactly where a strange number like 1644 suddenly becomes extremely useful. But why that specific year and not some other moment from Chinese history? For most Chinese viewers, 1644 instantly signals one thing: something massive, sudden, and irreversible collapsed. That year, the Ming Dynasty lost its capital, its emperor, and the legitimacy holding the entire system together. This wasn't just a normal power transition, it felt like the entire world flipped overnight for ordinary people. That emotional shock explains why 1644 still appears in textbooks, dramas, novels, and popular historical storytelling. It's short, dramatic, emotionally heavy, and honestly perfect material for modern memes and metaphors. But here's the key detail people forget. The Ming Dynasty didn't suddenly collapse in one bad year. The system had been cracking quietly for decades before anyone noticed the final dramatic breakdown. Financial trouble, heavy taxation, disasters, and endless military pressure slowly drained public trust. Local officials struggled to cope, while the central government gradually lost control and credibility. People didn't wake up hating the Ming Dynasty, they just stopped believing it could protect them anymore. Meanwhile, a new power was quietly organizing, training, and preparing along the northeastern frontier. Nurika united divided groups and built a disciplined military administrative system almost from scratch. His strength wasn't destiny or luck, it was organization, loyalty, logistics, and information control. In 1619, Ming forces actually outnumbered him, yet suffered a devastating defeat at the Battle of Sarhu. The problem wasn't courage or weapons, but leadership failure, poor coordination, and bad strategic decisions. By the time 1644 arrived, collapse felt almost procedural, like paperwork finally catching up. The system had mentally collapsed long before the capital physically fell to rebels and invaders. Now, to be clear, modern China is not the late Ming Dynasty, just with smartphones, apps, and faster internet. History doesn't repeat like copy and paste, but it does echo certain familiar questions. One of those questions is whether the system still works for ordinary people living inside it. In the late Ming period, people slowly felt the state demanded more while offering less protection. Today, some young people quietly feel effort keeps rising, while rewards feel delayed or uncertain. That feeling doesn't instantly produce rebellion or revolution, at least not at first. It usually produces skepticism, quiet doubt, and a sense of emotional distance instead. Skepticism often appears as humor long before it turns into anger. That's why jokes, memes, and strange historical references show up before protests ever do. Talking about history feels safer than talking directly about the present moment. Saying 1644 communicates frustration without spelling anything out explicitly. Everyone understands the feeling, even if nobody explains it openly. Authorities notice this quickly because metaphors travel faster than open criticism online. Once history turns into political language, it stops being neutral or harmless. That's why officials warn against misusing history or distorting historical narratives. Spoil. The concern isn't really about protecting history textbooks or academic accuracy. It's about controlling how people interpret the present through the past. Which brings us to the key question: what do people actually want right now? Despite the dramatic language online, most young people are not dreaming about overthrowing systems or starting revolutions. Honestly, what they want is far more boring and far more practical than that. They want jobs that lead somewhere, not just endless cycles of temporary survival. They want effort and reward to feel roughly proportional, even if success takes time. They want life plans that don't feel constantly punished or quietly discouraged. Marriage and children, for many, should feel like real choices, not social obligations. And they want to talk about problems without immediately worrying about consequences. None of these demands are radical, extreme, or unique to one country. You hear similar frustrations from young people in Seoul, Tokyo, London, or New York. The difference lies in how governments respond when growth slows and pressure increases. Stability often becomes the top priority, especially during economic uncertainty. That usually means tighter control, clearer narratives, and fewer tolerated gray areas. In China's case, national unity and continuity carry especially heavy political weight. Selective openness exists, but it's carefully balanced with strong internal management. On paper, this approach is logical and even effective in certain situations. Socially, however, the emotional distance between expectations and reality can still grow. When that gap widens, people avoid direct political language altogether. Instead, they joke, hint, and reference history as a safer alternative. It's quieter than protest, but it's not meaningless or random. Numbers like 1644 become shared shorthand for frustration, uncertainty, and emotional fatigue. It's not a demand, not a slogan, and not a plan. It's simply a signal that something feels off in everyday life. So no, the year 1644 didn't cause today's problems or suddenly inspire modern frustration. It's simply the word people reach for when other words feel unavailable or unsafe. A way to talk about now without talking directly about now. Even if you remove the number, the underlying feelings don't disappear. Suppressing metaphors doesn't remove pressure. It just changes how pressure leaks out. New jokes, symbols, and references will always appear sooner or later, because people always find ways to communicate, especially under constraints. The real question isn't about ancient dynasties or history textbooks. It's about whether everyday life feels manageable, fair, and worth planning around again. When trust improves, metaphors slowly fade back into history books. Until then, history remains useful, flexible, and emotionally powerful. Not as nostalgia, but as a quiet form of communication. Sometimes the past is simply the safest way people have to talk about the present.